Hello everyone, welcome to the fourth tutorial from Ulsisoft.com with respect to WxPython rapid application development with respect to graphical user interface using WxPython and Python programming language. So in the previous tutorial I was talking about object-oriented programming, and this tutorial will talk about a little bit basics on inheritance with respect to object-oriented programming in Python. So in the previous tutorials we discovered that our WX widgets installation is working and it is ready to use. So if you click the run button, we can actually see it's working. It means that the WX import statement is actually executing without errors. So let's talk about inheritance. Actually Python 3 actually supports multiple inheritance. Maybe in the previous couple of in the first episode, second episode, I actually told Python doesn't support multiple inheritance. I'm sorry for the wrong information, but actually Python supports multiple inheritance. But the issue of multiple inheritance is about the initialization in the child class using the super keyword and accessing the variables is actually very cumbersome. We'll actually see the issues of multiple inheritance. So it is actually recommended to use single inheritance and not multiple inheritance. That's exactly why Java and C# does not have multiple inheritance. So let's first talk about inheritance. So I have a base class. This will be used as a parent class or the super class, and this has the same contents which was there in the previous tutorial video. So let's create another class called the child class and inherit the base class or the super class, which is the top class here. Project class 1 is the super class, and the child class is the inheritant the class that is inheriting the super class. So the construct is the same to begin with. So the init function def so I created So I have created a child class which is inheriting the super class, which is project class 1, which is also known as the parent class. So it has the same init function, the constructor, and the call function for doing some work on the variables of this child class. So just run it and see is there any issues in this inheritance. This is the very first step of inheritance. So as we didn't find any other errors, the Python compiler did not complain about any errors. So this inheritance is working now. So this is single inheritance. I'll come to multiple inheritance a little bit later in time. So inheritance. So how to access the functionality like the variables like var2, var3, and print vars and print this in the child class, which is actually present in the scope of the project class 1, which is the super class. So for that you should use the super keyword in Python, then dot, then come to init. So this is the statement, this is the line for inheritance to work. So this is a super is a keyword. Super actually refers to the namespace of project class 1 here, because this is the inherited class and this is the class that is inheriting this class. So init function is calling the constructor here of the project class 1, and this is the line that actually tells the Python interpreter that the super class, the child class, is actually inheriting the project class 1. So this is single inheritance. So let's see how do we access the function called. So as you type self dot, you'll actually see what all you can actually call in the namespace of child class 1, which is now inheriting the project class 1. So as you can see, this print vars is actually in the namespace of project class 1, which is actually now inherited by child class. So let's see whether we can actually print vars, which is actually present in the project class 1, and we are trying to access the inherited function from the project class 1 in the child class. So let's run and see what happens. So as we can see, this is the coming from, so I'll just edit it. Let's add extra thing. Let's see. So as you can see, the superclass var2 and var3 has now been accessed using the inheritance statement, which is super, and calling the constructor called init. So we can access var1 and var2. We cannot access var2 and var3. We cannot access var1 because var1 is local to the constructor of the parse class. If any variable is created like var4, here, the print words using the constructor of the superclass, which is parse class 1, the var4 cannot be accessed at all. Even var1 cannot be accessed. The var1 is very local to the namespace of the constructor of parse class 1, and var4 is very local to the function called printwords, which is the function inside the namespace of parse class 1. So child class cannot have access to var4 and var1. It only has access to var2 and var3. Why? Because there is a keyword called self. The keywords called self is very important because it provides the namespace for the entire class. So if I remove self to the var2, now the var2 should give an error. So the var2, the object has no attribute var2 parse class 1, because var2 is now local to the constructor only. It is not even visible in print vars, because print var is accessing self vars. So let's see, we remove the self of the var2 and see how it goes. So var2 cannot be accessed. So var2 is not defined. The var2 is not defined in the function called print vars because var2 has been defined. The instance has been created, the object variable called var2 has been created in the constructor. So the var2 is not visible in the function called print vars, even though print vars is a function inside the namespace of parse class 1. So if you want to access var1, you should put self. So any function, any variable with the keyword called self, and the dot is for the object oriented, the self keyword will give access to all the variables of the things. So if we add self here, so just remember var4 is not defined in the constructor. So let's run this, because now var1 has been created. Let's see if we call here self dot. Actually you can see even var1 is visible and var4 is visible. Even though var4 has been declared in print vars, because the keyword called self is there, you can access in the child class, because the child class is inheriting parse class 1, and parse class 1 has var1 and var4 with the keyword called self dot. Self is there. That's why all four variables are visible, even though var4 has been declared in print vars and not in the constructor. So just keep in mind that once the variable has been prefixed by self dot, the word called self is used, it means that variable is accessible throughout the namespace of the class. So any child class inheriting the superclass also get access to the variables. So let's create two. So this is for var1, and this is for var4. So var4, remember var4 has been created in the function called print vars and not in the constructor. So because self is there, you can access anywhere. The entire namespace of the class can access var4 and even var1. So the variable need not be always in the constructor, but it is advisable to create the variable and provide some initialization. I'm just changing something here. Initialization should be done in the constructor, because as soon as the parse class 1 starts running, as soon as the the constructor starts as soon as the project class starts running. The init function is the one that is called by default. That's why init function underscore underscore init underscore underscore is known as the constructor. For example, like C++, Java and C# will have the constructor. In Python, this is the constructor. So anything inside will be executed. So initialization of variables, create variables, you want to do some if you want the function to be called, so just call the function here with the self dot words. So coming to the inheritance here, the other class which actually inherited pros class 1, I am accessing var1 and var4 with a keyword called self, because now the var1 has been prefixed with self and even var4 has the prefix called 4. So let's see how it goes. So as you can see, I'm calling print vars. The print vars is the function that has been inherited by the child class from the project class 1, but I haven't called function call function. Let's call function. So let's create an instance of child class. Let's create an instance of child class, and from, if you put dot here, you can actually see the IntelliSense of the PyDive is showing that call function is accessible, print this is available, print vars is available. Let's call function call. So let's copy paste and call the inherited class. The function from the inherited class with print vars is actually inside the namespace of pros class 1, and pros class 1 is the inherited class by the child class called child class. Okay. So I'll just change this as inherited class. You can give any meaningful names for the class, functions, variables as you please. So just be careful to give meaningful names so that you can keep track of the namespaces properly, and the variable names should not be really confusing or out of scope of the application development. So here I created a instance from the inherited class. I've just renamed it. The inherited class is inheriting the pros class 1, which is the super class, and the call function is in the namespace of inherited class, but print vars is actually in the namespace of the pros class 1. So if print vars executes properly, it should print a var2 and var3 and initialize var4 to 88.39. So I'll just change the sequence. First I'll call the print vars, which is inherited. So I will initialize this, initializes var4. Then I will call call function. So call function is actually trying to print what is the value of var4. So if the inheritance is working properly, if the code is written properly, then var4 value should display 88.3949. Let's see how it goes. So it printed superclass var4. So but remember, var4 has been initialized in the print vars and not in the constructor. So the so if you want to initialize any variable outside of any class, just use the word called self. But remember, the self is actually giving put the var4 into the entire namespace of the pros class 1. So if you remove the self, you'll get an error because it is only local. See, the var4 object has no attribute var4 because this var4 is only local to print vars. So you want the complete namespace of the pros class 1, just put self, so it works. So this is the single inheritance. Inheritance has been now we know how to provide how to write a code for single inheritance. So I think I will end this episode. Thanks for watching this episode on single inheritance. The next episode will talk about multiple inheritance and its issues. Thanks a lot. Thanks for watching. Bye.